Hello and welcome back to the Fit 40 podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy parents 40 plus so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we have another awesome topic on deck. We're going to be talking about what to do if you have some cranky knees when you are exercising. If you're feeling knee pain every single time you go to your yoga class or your bar method or CrossFit or whatever you're doing, here are some simple fixes to help you get awesome results and reduce, maybe even eliminate that knee pain over time. But before we jump in, make sure if you aren't already, make sure you go ahead and subscribe or follow wherever you're watching or listening so that way you don't miss another episode. So let's dive in. Do you have cranky knees? If so, here's the fix. But before we get into the fix, let's talk about why it's happening in the first place. So why do people have this knee pain going on? Easiest one that applies to most people in this situation is old injuries. A lot of people, whether it was sports when they were younger, or maybe they got in a car accident, maybe they took a fall, something happened where their knee is now compromised. Maybe their ACL, their MCL, their meniscus torn or replaced or whatever. There's a million and one things that they could do to the knee, and this stuff can play a role in pain. So that's a big one. Another one is arthritis. Sometimes we lose that cushion between the bones, and then that bone on bone just does not feel good. Sedentary people tend to have a lot of knee pain because they just don't work out, they don't exercise. And when you don't have that muscle to help you do things like get up and down from your chair or on and off the toilet, stuff like that, it can cause pain because you just don't have the muscle to perform the task, especially if we're carrying a little bit excess body fat, which is weighing down on the knees at the exact same time. So that could be a reason. And poor lifting mechanics. Like, let's say you are somebody who is very active. Maybe you're just doing things repetitively over and over and over again in a way that's not mechanically advantageous and is really doing a number on the knees. So how do we fix that? Well, first off, let's find some pain-free exercise. Let's find some exercise you can do and feel really good once it's all said and done. Not just in the moment, but after the session, and then the next day or two following, you're like, wow, I feel good after this. So experiment a little bit, see what works for you. And then along with that, doing some simple things when it comes to form, like keeping your knees inside of your toes. And what I mean by that is when you are squatting, when you're doing deadlifts, when you're doing lunges, make sure that wherever your big toe and pinky toes are, your knee is inside of them. It's kind of like bowling where you have the bumpers up. You want to keep that bowling ball, your knee, inside of the bumpers. Is it going to deviate a little bit? Yes. If you're pushing heavy enough to create a response where you're building muscle and denser bones, your knees are not going to be perfectly locked into this position like 100% of the time. But we want to have them inside of the big toe, pinky toe to create some sort of a boundary there, because in my experience, most people, when they do that, don't experience as much pain because many people tend to buckle their knees, especially the ladies, because many ladies have this thing called what's called a Q angle, where they just naturally have like wider hips and their knees are a little bit narrower compared to where their hips are. And they just get used to being in that position. And when you add weight onto that, it sometimes does not feel great. This is why female athletes, when they're younger, are actually a little bit more predisposed to things like ACL tears, because anatomically they are just set up in a way where they're just at an increased risk. So you got to account for that and really make sure that we are doing a few things to make this happen. Number one is rooting your feet into the floor and creating a tripod foot. What is that? Okay, a tripod foot is where you take your big toe, pinky toe, and your heel, and you make sure that they don't come off the floor at any point during your squat, your deadlift, or your lunge, or whatever. You make sure that they are locked in the entire time. For a lot of people, that does result in just stacking your joints and having those knees in line with your ankles and your toes nicely, and that'll just take care of it right there. But sometimes when people do this, it still isn't enough. So you might potentially have to twist your knees outward while keeping your feet on the ground, because I say knees out, knees out. What do people do immediately? They turn their feet outward. No. Keep your feet glued to the ground wherever they are and twist your knees out independent of the feet. It's going to be a really weird feeling, but you know how you know this is doing the job that you want it to is like for a squat, for example. All of a sudden, where you used to feel it in the knees, now you feel it more in the hips, especially the sides of your butt. Those that's a really good sign that, hey, I'm doing this right because I'm engaging these muscles that are helping with my knees. And if you want to take it a step further, because sometimes people, when they squat, when they lunge, their knees travel so far over their toes that that can create pain. Not saying that's inherently bad, and you should strive to push your knee as far over your toe as possible without pain. But let's say you experience pain. Sometimes doing things to reduce how far forward your knee goes can help. Things like box squats come to mind, where you sit down to a box, but you don't just sit down, you sit back to a box. That can help a lot. Or if you're doing a squat or a lunge or something, putting a foam roller in line with your toe. So basically, stand a foam roller up and put your toe against it, and try not to let your knee knock over the foam roller. That can help a lot as well. Yeah, those are just my favorite when it comes to the knees inside of the toes. And also, you want to make sure that your stress load is appropriate for adaptation. If you just go balls to the wall and do a lot of activity and put a lot of stress on that knee without the recovery that's necessary to build that muscle, to build denser bones and ligaments and tendons, then eventually it's going to break. Like, you can't just stress, stress, stress without recovery, because eventually something's got to give. Okay. So, for example, if you're an avid runner and you're adding in all this knee stuff, that could potentially not go so great. So it could help to dial back the running a little bit, to go into like a bit of a PT phase, like a physical therapy phase, where the mileage comes down to allow for a little bit more work on the knees. And then once you're in a place where you can handle that and it's really not feeling like you're super sore all the time and you feel energized, you're not really run down during the day because of this exercise load that you're experiencing, then you can go ahead and put the miles back on and start working it back up. Or let's say you hear what I'm talking about and you're like, oh, this is awesome, I'm going to do it every single day. Don't do that. Okay. If you're doing this appropriately and you're pushing it to a point where you're getting close to failure, you're adding weight, or you're adding repetitions, or you're adding weight, or you're adding time, this stuff will do the job if you stick to 2 to 4 times a week in the gym. That's plenty. And for most people who have other stress factors playing a role, because all stress is handled pretty similarly in our bodies, whether it's exercise, whether it's work, whether it's your family driving you nuts, whether it's the traffic outside, that stress response is very similar and it all adds up. So you got to account for all of that. This is why people in their 40s, 50s, 60s can't do the amount of exercise that somebody in their teens and their 20s can, because they're living pretty relatively carefree. They don't have real life stressors going on that are affecting this equation. So something to keep in mind. Now, my favorite exercises when it comes to building the knees back up, number one is wall sits. Okay. Wall sits are incredible. Number one, because they keep you in a spot. So, like, you're locked in, you're holding. And as long as you feel out how low you can go without pain, you can control a lot of things. Like, you're just holding in place and mastering putting stress on the quads, for example. So you can make sure your knees are in line. You can make sure that you're not so low that your knees are too far forward to the point where you're experiencing pain. And you could just add on seconds as time goes on. Or if you want to make it a little challenging, you could put a foam roller behind your back. So now you don't have the whole wall supporting you. You just have that foam roller, which will add difficulty. And then if you want to do that, then you could take a weight and hold it in your hands as you're doing that too. So now we have weight pulling you down that you got to resist against. But these are steps. You don't want to just do this right off the bat. Start with a normal wall sit, like relatively high, and then work yourself down, then the foam roller, then the goblet holder, holding 2 dumbbells down low, however you prefer. Another great one is banded TKEs. These are terminal knee extensions. Basically, what you do is you take a really thick band and you loop it around like a support beam or a rack or something that's not going to move, that's like pretty locked into the floor, and put it at knee level. And you loop it. So you feed one end through the other, pull one side, so that way it's hooked onto whatever that support beam or rack is. And then you basically step into the band so that the back of it is against the back of your knee. And you back up as far as you can, where you can go and hold it. And then from there, keeping a nice tall posture, you lift whatever the banded side is, you lift that heel up, let it pull your knee forward, and then you do the opposite. You push your heel down, push your knee back into the band. And when you do that, you should feel your quad, the front of your thigh, and your butt, and even your abs squeeze all together. And when you can do that for 15, 20, 25, 30 repetitions. Like these are great for high repetition ranges. Do that and you'll be surprised at how good your knees feel. That's like a good starter one to be like, okay, let's make sure we could at least do this. And then you could do goblet squats, you could do lunges and things like that after you do like a few weeks of this. Another one is leg extensions. If you have the ability to use a leg extension in a gym, that's the one where you're sitting down and your feet start under you and then you straighten out your legs. Uh, that's the hard part. So, like, you start with your knees bent and then you drive up into the foot pad with the front of your ankles and you push it up so your legs are straight. Those leg extensions are incredible. Like, you could just basically control for all the things you're controlling for with the TKEs, and you could add weight. It's really simple and it's great. And then if you have a really big asymmetry, like one knee, maybe you have one cranky knee and you're like, this is the operated knee and the other one's good to go, then do single leg and do the weak side first. So that way, whatever your weak side gets, you just match up on the strong side. And eventually over time, it'll get close to leveling out. Same with hamstring curls, because we don't want to just work the front of your thigh. I mentioned a bunch of different muscles before. You want to hit everything supporting the knee. So hamstring curl variations are awesome too. So you could do that on the machine where you're belly down and you're pulling your heels to your butt, that one, or you could do a seated one where your legs start straight and then you bend your knees and pull your heels under you and do that one. You could do slider hamstring variations. Basically, you have like furniture sliders on your under your heels on a carpet or turf or something where the sliders can move pretty easily, and you just bridge yourself up and then slowly let your legs straighten out. And then you can either rest, pull them back and reset, or you can keep your butt up in the air as you pull your feet back. Those crush the hamstrings in the best of ways. Or if you don't have sliders, you could do walkouts. Basically, you do the exact same thing, but instead of sliders pushing your feet forward, you take short, choppy steps forward until your legs straighten out. Next is step ups and step downs. There's basically a million ways to do this. Like, you could step up like the standard one that we all know and love. You could do that sideways where you step up and down facing sideways. It puts a little more stress on the outside of your leg, which hits all these muscles that do a great job at supporting your knee. You could do linear, like basically stepping down but stepping forward, kind of like if you were to face down your stairs and you were to just like tap your heel to the floor while one foot stays on the first stair. That's another really good one. That is kind of like the TKE where it hits those same parts. So those are really great. Calf raises, whether you're standing or seated. If you're having knee issues, I wouldn't get too crazy with like these bodybuilding techniques where you turn your toes in or toes out. Like, just keep them straight for those purposes we talked about where we're stacking. So everything's in line and we're mechanically in a better place. RDLs, that'll work the hamstrings and the butt a lot. So that's basically like a deadlift, but you stop halfway. So, or you could do deadlifts as well. But basically you take dumbbells, a kettlebell, a trap bar, a barbell, any kind of weight, and you just push your butt backward until your wrist gets to about where your knee is. And then you stand right back up. And the key there is not to let the knees go forward, because the more the knees go forward, the more it works the front of the leg. And we're not trying to do that on an RDL or a deadlift. You want to work the back of your legs. So you got to keep those knees put, let them bend, but they're not pushing forward. They're bending because your butt's going backwards and your shins are staying vertical. And then along with that, I think a good end goal would be to progress to the point where we could do a split squat or a lunge, and you could start supported, like you're holding on to something for balance, and then work your way up to unsupported and build up from there. But that's like the ultimate, like, okay, I can do things off of one foot and I feel really good doing them. Like, you can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to have any knee pain if you do this properly and you advance accordingly based on you feeling good, you getting stronger and things like that. Because if you can do a split squat or a lunge with weight, you're going to be in a really, really good spot. And if for some reason you can't do that, because I know some people, when they put their foot back behind them, there's an ankle issue, or sometimes you do still feel it in the knee on the back leg side, then you could do something like a single leg squat. I call them kickstand squats. Basically, you sit down to a bench or a box and you stand back up. You start with both feet together. And when you find that spot that you could sit down to and your feet are in a good place, you take one foot, you kickstand it up so you're on your heel and your toes are floating in the air. The other foot is nice and flat on the ground. And from there, you use that foot that's flat on the ground to help you sit down and stand up. And that way, you don't have to challenge the ankle with that either. So, these are a few of my favorite things, but I hope you got a lot out of it. Some ideas are brewing, and you're like, okay, I could try this, I could try that. And I just hope at the end of the day that your knees feel better, because being in constant pain sucks. I've had that experience where I've been in pretty much constant pain with my low back, with my shoulder and things like that due to sports and dumb lifting in the past. And it sucks. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for anybody. And I really, really, really hope that this does a good job at getting you out of that place. And along with that, if you are hearing all this and you're like, that is a lot, I don't know what to do, even with all that awesome information, that's why I have a job, pretty much. Okay. If you want a personalized program that meets you where you're at and gives you the right exercises in the right order to make sure that you have the best results, that's what personal training is for. Like, if you live near Greenville, North Carolina, and you want to train with me in person, then I'm here for you. Or let's say you don't live in the area, I do online coaching as well, where I can program and say, hey, do this, not that. And we can make sure that based on how your body's responding, we're making the right calls as far as it goes with picking the right exercises for you. Or if you're not in the area, I also do over Zoom. Like, my personal training is Zoom friendly. So if you want to do it from your basement or your gym at home or your gym down the street, whatever, like, you can hop in and be a Fit 40 client in person that way. And let's say you don't want to take it to that level and you're like, listen, dude, I just want some programs where I could test it out first. I hear you. Okay, that's what the Toned in 20 workouts are for. They're down in the description and the show notes, along with the link if you want to set up a coaching consultation for what I mentioned previously. Both of those will be down below. So take advantage, click away. Hopefully, I will be talking to you soon, because at the end of the day, when we hop on these calls, I just want to help. If you want to do it with me, awesome. If not, I still want to help. I still want to give you some helpful things going forward. So set up that call or pick up your workouts, and I guarantee you won't regret it. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening in. I'll see you next time. But until then, go kick some ass. Bye-bye.